Believe it or not, we've got a couple of cold fronts on the way. We actually had one that came through yesterday. We have another one that comes through for your Labor Day weekend. And then even a stronger one comes in for the middle to late next week. So let's take a look at the temperature anomalies for this afternoon. You can see the areas across the north into the Ohio Valley, into the mid-Atlantic, as well as into the Northeast. That area in green, that is your 10 to 15 degrees below average temperatures. There's also a cooler shot of air across the plains and that went through North Texas last night and really experienced a drastic cool down compared to the 100 degrees yesterday in Dallas. Now you're only at 78 into the afternoon as of right now. It's even cooled down for the Four Corners regions and the Desert Valley area, where the only warm spot in town are actually two places, at least for right now, into Central Texas as well as South Texas. But you even will be able to cool down over the coming days. But the heat is going to be on for across the West, especially into the Pacific Northwest. All that area in red, that implies the dome of high pressure is locked over that region. And unfortunately, I don't really see that changing anytime soon, because if we turn our attention to the teleconnections, looking at some of the longer term play for the next week or two, looking at the PNA, your Pacific North American, you see that predominantly positive here. That's where we stand now, and that looks to be where we're going to stand to end the month of August and going into that first week of September. So that ridge of high pressure is going to be locked over that region and keeping those warmer anomalies, if not hot anomalies, in place for the foreseeable future. But once you swing into the central and eastern two-thirds of the U.S., you're definitely looking at the EPO, your East Pacific Oscillation. Now that's completely the opposite. You already have a -3 deviation, but look at that, a much stronger front that comes in next week, going all the way down to a -6. That's pretty impressive for the first week of September. If this was January, this would be a really cold shot of Arctic air, but nonetheless, it's the first week of September. So you're going to cool down in a big way, and definitely could imply the first fall front of the season possibly on the table for the middle of next week. And you can definitely see it continues to remain on the negative side. So there's going to be a continuing push of much cooler air, at least through the first 10 days all the way into September. So that's pretty impressive stuff. For the rainfall estimates this afternoon, there we have the cool front. That's the one that came through yesterday. Now that's in Central Texas, draped across that region. So the overrunning setup is going to bring afternoon showers and thunderstorms across the deep south into Florida. Portions of Louisiana and Mississippi could get some heavier rain. But all this rain out here is a combination of a couple of factors. In fact, it's going to be the remnants of what was Tropical Storm Juliet out there in the Pacific. Left some decent rains for Southern California and Southern Arizona, but now it's getting caught up in the jet stream, and the upper level winds pushes it back down south and will spread tropical moisture into New Mexico, areas of the Panhandle, further north into Nebraska, as well as into the Dakotas. That's today, and then this is tomorrow. Another reinforcing shot of moisture surge back into the same areas. Could get some heavier rains likely into the morning time frame in New Mexico, there into West Texas. So definitely look out, more shots of rain, but it's also going to pull down some of that cooler air aloft yet again and sink it just a little bit further south heading into your Labor Day weekend. So as we flip the calendar to Sunday, the last day of August, and actually the last day of meteorologically summer, it doesn't look like summer, because we've got a pretty deep trough over the central and eastern two-thirds of the U.S. And look what happens. We've got two domes of ridges of high pressure, and look what's building well to the north. This is going to be able to break apart this ridge of high pressure and pull down some of that colder air, and that's going to sink southbound, and that's what's going to set the stage for a pretty impressive colder shot of air for the first week of September, and leave many of you feeling like fall is on the table as we start the first week of September. So looking at the temperature anomalies for your actual Labor Day, where you expect that ridge and where I showed you where the ridge is because of all the heat locked over the western regions, that's likely only going to intensify yet again going into your Labor Day. But if you live in the central and eastern 2/3 and even down to the deep south, that's where I think replaced with, like, say, areas like San Antonio, you're baking into the triple digits. Now you're looking at like in the upper 80s coming up for your Labor Day. So that's going to feel really nice. But this likely sinks all the way down into the Gulf Coast. Even Florida likely could get into the action with some of those below average temperatures coming up for your actual Labor Day. And that's obviously where the rain is going to be, where that cool boundary lies. You always look for overrunning type setups, and that could be like a little bit of a cooler, if not chillier rain for, September standards. So going into that Tuesday, this is your September 2nd outlook. And yeah, look what happens. These ridges kind of break apart and opens up the door and creates a funnel effect that drops this cooler air mass down from the north and puts it into the lower 48. So this will be a step down process, but this could be the real deal for the first week of, this is typically, you don't really see this until like the third week of September, but it's coming in early this year. With a good shot of cooler air, it's going to feel like fall for a lot of you guys in the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. And the Climate Prediction Center is on board as well, with the teleconnections pretty much locked in. They're locked in as well, with the dominant red across the areas of the Pacific Northwest and the dominant blue with those well above average temperature anomalies coming down the pike into Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois. It is going to be a chilly outlook ahead for next week, especially by Wednesday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday all look to be well below average. And that's going to be another front that likely will make it all the way down into the deep south and drop those temperatures fairly decent for this time of year. I mean, if you're looking at the anomalies heading into Wednesday afternoon, you've got 25 degrees above average across the Pacific Northwest. You've got 20 degrees below average across the plains and the northern plains. That's going to feel on the chillier side compared to what you've experienced all summer long. So it will definitely be kind of a taste of fall, or at least the first fall front could be on the table, and that only sinks further south. So it's got a one-way ticket all the way down to the deep south, going to bring those below average anomalies and going to change the atmosphere big time with those 15 to 20 degrees below average hitting across Oklahoma by then. This would be your Thursday, negative 15 below average there in the Dallas area. You're looking at 17 below average there in Tennessee. So the trend is your friend. And looking at the actual temperatures by the time we hit into next Friday, wow, this is nice, folks. That is open up your window weather right here. You've got widespread 40s across Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois. Turn off the AC. Let Mother Nature take over, because it's going to feel really pleasant waking up to 50-degree lows there in Kansas. How about 50 there in Oklahoma? Even 56 for Dallas. Man, that's going to feel really nice. And that's something they haven't experienced since May, right? So this is definitely looks to be kind of the first, would qualify for the first fall front of the season, even though it didn't actually start until about 2 or 3 weeks from now. But overall, as far as the precipitation anomalies, of course, where you see that ridge of high pressure, obviously you're not going to have much rain coming out of that atmosphere, and that's exactly what's going to happen over the next 7 days. You remain on the high end dry side for much of the west and the Pacific Northwest, and where you get the cool shots of air and the boundaries and the combination of Juliet remnants and the cooler shots of air will leave some decent rain totals across Texas that will swing through over the next 7 days. We'll also have another pocket of energy that's coming across the Dakota through Nebraska area. And then of course the cold front is, these cool boundaries are going to be stalling across this region, will obviously cause some moderate to heavier rains at times across Florida, and then some lighter amounts up the East Coast and into the northeast. So if you combine all the temperatures, just over the next 10 days with the highs and lows, it's still below average, guys. So where it's warm right now, it's going to continue to remain warm across the west and the Pacific Northwest, and where you're experiencing the cooler weather right now, there's definitely a lot more to come. And even those areas further south will get pieces of it as well. So most everybody, if you live in the central and eastern 2/3, at least is going to feel this cooler shot of air in some form of fashion over the next 10 days. And other areas are going to feel it really big time, especially if you're waking up in the 40s in Illinois by the time we come into the middle of next week. So guys, I appreciate you watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update. Why I protect you before and after the storm.